Hey everyone, and welcome to this session on the Business Rules Engine, or BRE. So the BRE is actually an application that helps you with quick data lookups. Here, I've actually opened the BRE console. You can get into the administration console from the portal. So this is portal. You would launch business rules here, and this is where you actually create the rules for what you want to look up and how you want to extract that. Now, BRE obviously is a simple data dip within your flow. So what you would do within flow is you would invoke a BRE lookup step. So here I have a simple contact center flow, right, where I have something called a BRE request. Now, the BRE request, you can think about it as an HTTP GET request. The only difference being that the BRE resides within our data center, right? So it's data that you would upload into WebEx Contact Center in terms of CSV or key value pairs. You would use a specific key that you want to use, right, to look up some information about the customer. So the first thing that we always go with BRE for configuration is to understand the data model. So here I have a very simple BRE database with key value pairs, right? What's interesting about the values here that you see in this CSV is I have all the keys here. These are numbers. This can be a customer ID. This can be an ANI. This can be a DNIS or card number, right? Any number here, which is a unique identifier of this row or a primary key, right? And you have values here on the right side. Now, this value is basically one string. I just have delimiters here. So it is considered to be one column, right? If this was a CSV, this would just be column 2, and this would be column 1. So think about BRE as being a single column lookup, right? And if you want multiple columns to be looked up, you would need to use delimiters. We have a very common pipe symbol as a delimiter for BRE. So this is a very simple example where you have numbers here and the type of customer name, the queue you want to send the customer to, and the disposition code, right? Which can be sale or something else. So this is a very simple lookup. Whenever this customer calls in, we look at the ENI. We do a data dip inside of BRE. We find a match, let's say 1122. We find what the string is. We pull all of that information, get that inside a flow, and then populate that information. Now that's going to be a simple example. You can do it for ANI, you can do it for DNIS. So I'm just going to show you a really simple example. So first, getting started, you need to understand that this data needs to go into the cloud, right? So what we have is we have a BRE data sync tool. So you can go into rules, webxcc.us1.cisco.com, and just go to data sync, right? Hit on data sync and hit enter. What that's going to do is going to send you to WebEx Contact Center BRE data sync, where you can upload CSV data into BRE. So you would have your tenant listed here. Now, before you are able to do this, the ops team will need to configure a lookup type for you. This is basically just a label. So what do you want to look up? You want to look up a customer ID, or you want to look up an ANI or a DNIS or an area code or any other unique identifier. We will configure that unique identifier name. So your tenant name, this is just the tenant name, right? Lookup type can be anything. So this is an area code lookup, contact center status lookup, any lookup, customer ID, right? These are the kind of things that we can add for you. So just let us know what your lookup type is, and you'll be able to list it within the data sync tool. Now, this is a simple ANI lookup where we're just going to add, let's say, ANIs and some data here. So simple example here is you go to add BRE data, and I'm just adding a value here. Just a single value, a key value pair. I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, 7. Okay. And I'm going to make it VIP customer. And I can put more data here, separated by pipe. And I'm just going to do something like VIP customer. Click on submit. Data has been added. Now I can list that data. So go to your tenant, BRE data list first, and then do a lookup type, and then see what kind of data that we have. So ANI lookup, I just added this right now. Right, you can see that. So you can add data like this. When you want to upload CSV data, you would go into upload BRE and upload the entire CSV. You cannot modify single rows. We don't have that. It's just a simple write once, read many type of use case. It's not used for write many, right? It's just a read lookup table, right? Think about it that way. Now that I have this, I'm going to show you an example of a complex lookup, or you can say lookup which has multiple values, right? So I have a number here, and then I have a string here, right, with the name of the customer and then the address as well, for example. So What I'm going to do is first, now that I have the data inside of BRE, I'm going to go ahead and start showing you how to actually configure BRE. So you'll go in a portal, you'll go to business rules, right? Launch that. It's going to take you to this BRE dashboard. Now all you need to do is tell BRE what to do, what attribute to look for in this database. So you can see that it has what we call as a context, which is called any lookup. It can be a different context, right? Then it's got the key, which is what we're going to look for. Then it's got a value, which we're going to extract, right? And that value will need to have some meaning to it, which we call a label, right? So think about it that way. So we have attributes, we have labels, we have context. Context are rules, what to do when you find a match, when you don't find a match. So go to attributes first, create what we call context. So this name needs to be context. Just go ahead and add, because we have a BRE rule defined. So just click on add. Here I'm clicking on edit, but you will go and add name as context and data type as text. Once you do that, just click save. And that means that you have added a context. Now you will need to create a label. So just go from left to right. This label is very important. So this label actually gives meaning or color to your data. So what is this data saying about your customer? So you want to make that a variable that makes sense. I've seen folks just put in route info, but that's not meaningful enough. Here, in this case, it's customer type, right? VIP, non-VIP. That's what I'm looking for. So I've named that label as customer type. So I go ahead and create a label and make it customer type, or the type of customer, as well as some metadata. So I'm going to have some metadata as well about the customer, like name of the customer, the queue I want to send them to, all of that. So all of this data is going to pop up, right? So I'm going to click on save. Created my attribute, created my label. Now all I need to do is create my rules. In the context, you need to add the context first, and this name has to match the name of the generated context inside of BRE. What I mean by that is, when you add the data, you will have something called a generated context. This is very important. This is going to be the way that BRE matches that. So this needs to match this, all right? Case sensitive, make sure that they match any lookup. Description is optional. You can add whatever you want, but the attribute is going to be the context, right? Save that. This ties any lookup to what we just created here. And now you'll need to create two rules. The rule when you find a match and when you don't find a match. The rule when you find a match is to give you that data, right? If I find a match here, I need this data. So you're going to create a rule. Now make sure that you clicked on, let me go back, clicked on add rule editor, right? So when you click on add rule editor, the button, it's going to pop up the rule. Now you don't have to remember the rule and the way it looks, because it's using a rules engine. So just follow the docs and then just paste that rule in there, right? And I'll give some color to the rule. Very important to set the priority, and each rule will have a decreasing priority, with the 100 being the highest. So when something is found, you want to just say ANI found, or maybe DNI is found, whatever you're doing, customer ID found. So if the customer ID is found, the rule has to be active, right? So let's say when ANI is found, right? The label is very important. Like I said, the label is what data you're getting back. So I'm getting the customer type data back. This rules editor is what is going to be using the same rules engine. Just copy it. You don't have to, look at the rule, but I can just explain that real simple. Look at everything that's in blue. It's saying that it's going to get the attribute, which is context. And this ANI that you see here is important for flow editor. Now, if you change this, then you'll have to change that value inside of flow, but it's basically what the lookup type is going to be. So in case you're using customer ID and you actually want to change this to customer ID, just remember that, because you will need this inside of flow, right? So the context is ANI, and this doesn't need to match anything, and I'll explain that in a bit. Now, put the attribute as the label. So customer type is going to be the attribute. Now, you need not be the label, but it's basically just the data that you're getting and what is the actual object attribute, right? You'll get an object from BRE. You'll get this object. Now, the object dot customer type is going to give you this entire string, all right? So that's exactly what we're doing. So just make sure that the attribute is the same, and then you can leave everything as is. Click on save. You'll create a similar rule. I'm going to do that real quick. Add a rule for not found, right? And that rule is just when you can't find a match. Pretty simple. And again, make that active, make the priority 99 this time, because otherwise you'll get a conflict, right? Because you can't have two rules with the same priority. That's just how BRE is made. So we'll copy that rule and we'll paste it in here. It should be in the guide. This defines when I don't find a match, what is the value of the data? It just is going to give you a string called not found. In fact, this needs to be customer type as well, because we have changed the name, right, to make it meaningful. So the context is ANI. I'm still doing an ANI lookup, but in this case, I'm doing customer type. So click on save. So you have both those rules in there. And now it's as simple as just plugging in a new flow. So I've created a new flow called BRE demo. It's a very simple flow. So I'm using this BRE request step. I just dragged it to the right, for example. Inside of this step here, the context needs to match the generated context. So inside of data sync tool, whatever generated context you have, whether it's DNIS lookup, whether it's CC status lookup, you would have to match this context inside of the context. In this case, now you remember the rule that we created, right? So if you go into BRE context and let's go back into ANI found, you'll actually see the meaning of that, right? So it is the attribute of ANI that I'm actually passing into BRE as the key. So this is the attribute. So ANI lookup dot ANI, right? So if you look at this, I'm actually doing ANI lookup dot ANI. And here, of course, if you're doing a hard-coded test, you can, if you have data like this, for example, you want to match this and test this out, you can copy this and then literally put it here and the test will work. Now we want to make this dynamic. So I've just got the ANI from the new phone contact node. There's ANI, there's DNIS. So I'm going to actually copy that. But remember, if you copy that and send it into the BRE request, it's going to send it with a +1, right? So to eliminate this +1, I have done some pre-processing of the ANI. So you can see that there is, the ANI is getting pre-processed. I've done the ANI.replace +1 with nothing, which means that if I had a number like this, right, it would just strip out the +1 and then do a lookup here and then go to BRE and then do a match, right? None of this has a +1. So we're going to go ahead and do some pre-processing. Once I do the pre-processing, I'm going to pass that in to BRE. So let's go ahead and add that variable. Now, of course, I've created a custom variable. Click in the canvas anywhere. Here's the ANI, right? So this is where the customer type is going to be. And this is what I'm passing into BRE. So look at it again, context ANI lookup, and ANI is what I'm passing into BRE. Response timeout is 5, number of retries 3. Now, what's important is this is an HTTP data dip, right? So you're going to get back data. Now, I've created a string variable called customer type to store that. You would match it to the kind of lookup type. So let's say you were looking up customer details and you had this as customer details, then you would rename the attribute as customer details, and then you would put the path expression as .customer details, right? So important to tie all of those things together because it's all about just attributes and data, right? So customer type is what you're going to extract, and that matches with customer type where you're putting the actual BRE context, right? So I'm going to extract that customer type, and then I'm actually going to extract data as well. Now, in this case, I get customer type as the string, like my name and then the address, right? Let's say I want to split this along the pipe symbol. I'm doing some post-processing of that string. So you can see that I'm splitting it with the pipe symbol, and this is a delimiter. It's important to use a backslash with every system delimiter, right? So for example, if I didn't use the backslash, I would not get this, but I'm testing it out. This is what BRE is going to get me, and I'm going to just fetch the last split version, which is address Toronto. Now, if I just wanted the name, I'll do a first and then get the name, right? So I'm going to go with maybe just the last portion now, just to pop the address into the agent desktop. And now you can obviously take customer type as a variable, do your screen pops, do your post processing, whatever you want to do. I'm just going to post it into the agent desktop. So let's go in there and let's make a quick test call. And that's it. That's how simple it was. And that's the point of this video. Just create that, making a test call now. So I'm going to go ahead and answer the call. So you can see the customer type got popped into address Toronto, right? Which is the flow variable here. So let me just show you that. This is the CAD variable, customer type.